And we're live. Welcome back, everyone. Owen here. I got Midnight Philosopher back in the studio. How are you, Midnight?
It's good to be with you again, Nonan. Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's been a whirlwind of a few weeks, kind of moving from place to place and some illness in the family, but I'm hopeful that things will be more regular for the time being, and it's nice to be back on a podcast with you.
Yeah, it's much funner to talk with someone else than to ramble on my own, which I do a lot of. So I always enjoy our conversations, and um, I'm in the car for the next hour or so. So hopefully the audio isn't too poor, and if I break up once in a while, I'll hop back in when the signal clears, so people can
Hmm.
bear with us. But it's pretty amazing, to think about where we've come from. Where you and I are carrying on conversations, uh, well, in different states these days, and but it's just incredible what you can do with little technology and a good cell phone and wireless
Yeah,
earbuds.
absolutely. It's made the world a lot smaller than
Yeah.
perhaps any of us could have imagined.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful because it makes it much easier for me to fit stuff like this in around the hectic life of, you know,
Hmm.
husband and dad and busy professional and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
you're literally like it's fire hose in hand and podcasting microphone in the other.
yep, you got to multitask, keep your hands busy.
Yeah.
So, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we are talking. Well, let's kick things off with sort of the latest big news piece that was floating around Twitter the last few days, or maybe it's been a week now. I don't know. It's just I feel like we just get bombarded with news all the time. But I guess Pope Leo said something that was well, basically to paraphrase what he was saying, I think he was asked about some politician in the states that had gotten an award, something involving I think it was Dick Durbin
Yeah,
and
Supich was going
Cardinal
to give him an
Supich.
award,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think Pope Leo said something along the lines of I mean, obviously Pope Leo is very pro-life, but he also said that if if you're going to mistreat migrants or support the death penalty, can you really, it's not really fair to call you pro-life. And then of course, you can always count on those snowflakey trads to just get triggered, and they started melting faster than that piece of ice that Pope Leo blessed, which also
yeah,
caused another
yeah,
meltdown.
yeah. It doesn't take much to melt down the trads, I've noticed.
Not really. It's so funny. It's such a juxtaposition of opposites because you have these like big bearded cigar smoking whiskey sipping trads filming their stuff in front of a brick wall, and then the moment something happens they just start like crying like a bunch of hormonally charged teenage girls.
Well, it's funny how they want to be these tough guys and whatever, and they also want to be like, well, we don't have to listen to this newfangled pope when it comes to the death penalty or patriarchy and stuff like that, and yet they will get bent out of shape about whether you're holding your hands the right way during the Our Father at Mass, right? It's just like
Hmm.
uh, I don't know, and we're probably all guilty of that. I suppose we're all guilty of probably having blind spots to things that we think are trivial, and we probably exaggerate things that aren't, so important. I don't know, but you know, the trads are trads are people too, much as much as it may not seem that way. Sometimes they're humans
Hmm.
too. So
Yeah, for sure. They still have more emotions than AI as far as we can tell.
yeah, those darn emotions just can't be trusted. If we could just be
Yeah.
reasoning robots, and you know,
Hmm.
so
But yeah,
yeah,
I think
so
it's an interesting topic. Oh, sorry, go on.
no, as far as the death penalty goes, I mean, y- you know, I don't know how much their heart is in the idea of the death penalty itself, or if it's simply the fact that we simply cannot acknowledge we ever got anything wrong, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
really is. I mean, yeah. I mean, they're. I think they're 100% right that it is difficult to reconcile what, let's say, the modern popes Francis and Leo say about the death penalty as compared to what, let's say, Aquinas and a lot of the church fathers said. I mean, I think they correctly acknowledge the conflict there in the same way that we always say that I think they correctly acknowledge the conflict between Thomas Aquinas and Augustine in theology of the body or Humani Vitae. Well, the issue is, well, what do we do with that conflict, right? And for them, and maybe this is the technically the correct response is, well, if there's a conflict, we go with the older, we go with the tried and true, and we must assume that the newer is wrong rather than say, is it possible that there's just been we know things now that we didn't know then, or maybe we were in fact wrong and it wasn't one of those infallible can never be changed things.
Hmm.
And just you know have the kind of the humility to acknowledge where we've been imperfect, because no one claims the church is imperfect, right? And they'll be the first to say, "Oh, the Pope is only infallible in certain things. Humani Vitae is not infallible." But Pope Francis said in what Fidelis Custodius and the one on remarriage and stuff, like they will be the first to say the Pope is not infallible on that stuff, right? Nope, lost midnight. There we go.
Oh, sorry, that was my mistake. I accidentally hit something. So yep,
Okay.
I'm back on. But I
Yeah.
caught most of that, just about the preference for the old and
Yeah.
this insecurity about anytime something, yeah, something new or conflicting comes up.
Yeah. And so I think, and I get it. Like I understand the reasoning behind it, but it seems to me that they're arguing for the older not because it's better on its merits, but because it's older, right? And the alternative is to potentially have to acknowledge error or mistake or whatever you want to call it, whatever adjective you want to give for the change. What cannot happen in any way is give the appearance that that the church has made some mistakes along the way, right? Like that is the
Hmm.
only option that is not even allowed to be considered. And so then it forces them, I think, to defend some untenable positions. I mean, we got folks. Joe and I talk about this on the most recent episode that'll come out on the UCM this weekend. But those that absolutely affirm that the Earth is at the center of the universe because, well, the church
Hmm.
once said it. And I don't care what science says. That's that's what it is, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
JD
it is.
wanting to get in on the action here.
I think so. I don't know if that just means he'll just chat behind the scenes, like in the private chat, or maybe have a,
I'm gonna
yeah,
add.
maybe
I'm
maybe
gonna
he'll.
add him. I'm gonna add him to the stage, but he won't be on camera. So JD, if you wanna
Okay.
chat, whatever. But yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think you're spot on because I think what you said is very well backed up. I saw a pretty extended post from our dear brother Ed Fazer. And I
Oh,
also got around to watching, that episode of Pints with Aquinas with Dr. Peter Kwasniewski. It was kind of an almost 4-hour marathon of, talking about the TLM. But
oh my gosh.
both Kwasniewski and Fazer basically made the same point, which in fewer words, it's exactly what you said, that with the whole death penalty topic, whether it's Pope Francis or Pope Leo, it's what's at stake is really the consistency of the church's teaching.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
it's no longer even about evaluating the issue itself, but it
Yeah.
is kind of like, which is kind of, specifically with pro-life ethics, what's kind of ironic is a lot of the trads will the whole seamless garment theory about how we have to be pro-life on abortion, but
Yeah.
we can't really stitch it together with a death penalty or with euthanasia. Those are all separate topics, and
Yeah.
they kind of they say it's impractical to have that seamless garment where you have to go issue for issue. and yet they're totally going for a seamless garment in terms of the continuity of church
Hmm.
teaching, so much so that they'll ignore those conflicts, or as you said, they'll always go with the older thing. I mean, but to Kwasniewski's credit, he emphasized that just because the church teaches that the death penalty is licit, it doesn't mean we have to be enthusiastic about it. It doesn't mean we have to apply it as often as possible. So I guess he was balanced in that it's more about the technicality of never declaring the death penalty wrong, even if we're not really excited about it, we don't like it. But again, it's that technicality of you have to maintain that consistent teaching, even if it involves bending your mind or suppressing your conscience and accepting that maybe something doesn't quite add up and maybe it doesn't fit with our moral intuitions, assuming that our moral intuitions can continue to grow, with the more human experiences we accumulate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's that fact that the church, let's say the church's greatest asset, if you will, which is, let's say being um without error on on the things that matter, or whatever, and never changing just to change with the culture, whatever. On the one hand is maybe her greatest strength, but it also is perhaps her greatest vulnerability, because it makes her it puts us in the church in a difficult position. And when these things, just clearly require us to turn off reason and logic, and even even feelings, for what that's worth, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that really is the big thing, that conflict between, as you said, consistency. It's important. We can't just change willy nilly. We have to have a strong foundation. But I think if you push it so far to the point of rigidity, where it's basically not pragmatic to engage your conscience if it's going to be in conflict at all, you might as well just shut everything off and be like a total robot about it, which is unrealistic, but that's kind of what they're asking us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, and for I think for some people, I think this is why I think it doesn't account for the fact that different people, not everyone is the same. We're not all
Mhm.
like, some people, just the way their minds work, for just to be have a reasonable sense of calm and peace, need that absolute certainty, direct, like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, right? and
Mhm.
and they don't want to, let's say, they don't want the wiggle room or the gray area or the discretion to try to figure things out for themselves. They just want to be told, so they don't have to worry about whether they're doing the right thing. Tell me what the right thing is and I will do it, right? And for some people, maybe a lot of people, that works. And I've heard, I think we've seen reports or studies where people with, I hope this is the right term, but like neurodivergent tendencies
Mhm.
tend to uh, n- uh, gravitate to traditionalism, because they go well together. But for those, that don't work that way, that constriction can be just like a straitjacket, right?
Mhm.
And I'm probably a little more into that category a little bit, and that's kind of where the area that I wrestle in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think exactly as you said, this being straitjacketed, and I think that all the stuff with this meltdown over the death penalty and the maintenance
Mhm.
of consistency, it does relate to your sort of, yeah, your bread and butter topics, just because we are dealing with the same thing of not contradicting, the doctors of the church, or not
Yeah.
contradicting the so-called perennial teaching, even when you have cold hard data of things not adding up, or it might not work for your particular situations, or as Jonah 1.0 is so beautifully describing, or beautifully kind of encapsulating with his recent experiences. Sometimes some flexibility of the rules really does lead to a better marriage.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And so I think that's I think where a lot of the conflict arises, and why not just, I don't know, let, and it sort of does fit into the whole do you like the traditional liturgy or not? I'm a fan of anyone that if that is the best environment for you to grow in faith and have a great relationship with God, then then do that and make that available to people. But let's not
Mhm.
assume that that's best for everyone. Let's not force it upon anyone, and let's not ban it. And I think in a similar way, when it comes to theology and these kinds of things, I think recognizing that different people have different needs, but it's just hard to reconcile that with this. Well, there can't be different right answers for different people, right? I mean, that is and I get it. Like that's the paradox. But I think I
Maybe
think
there is.
Mhm.
maybe,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, why can't there be, right?
Yeah.
all right. We got JD in the house. It's a party.
Hey guys, so I'm about to hit this bridge that takes me from Charlestown to Cambridge. This bridge sometimes cuts me out. If that
Okay,
happens, you'll be seeing me knocking on the door again. But
okay, I'll watch
uh
for you.
um uh yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is probably I just I I do think that I do really think different people are different. And
Yeah,
I think God knows that. And I think God made us different, and then circumstances also make us different. um the devil also makes us, he throws different curveballs at different people, which makes us different as well. And I kind of have a funny feeling that, God is creative enough and smart enough to understand that perhaps we all we're all gonna um need a little bit of a different path to get where we're headed.
well, and I think even our friend Murphy's Muskets, who's in the chat, I think look at the- men and women are different, right? I mean, maybe we could debate that, but I think there's a lot of people that think men and women just approach life very different. We perceive reality different. We have different strengths and weaknesses, different needs, and that is
Absolutely.
definitely true in my marriage. And we don't I don't try to make my wife think and feel the way I do, and she doesn't try to make me think and feel the way she does. We recognize each other. We try to complement each other, and there is conflict and tension, and that's okay. That's part of the human experience. But we don't try to like change or force the other one to adapt to our different ways we are, right? And why can't the same be true when it comes to our faith and some of the theology and the morals?
Well, I mean, I think God is the most creative. He's the most
Yeah.
imaginative. He's the most versatile. He's the most understanding, the most merciful, and He created us to be the most adaptable species
Mm.
on Earth.
Yes.
Adaptability is our it's our claim to fame on this planet, and we're in His image. You would imagine He's the most adaptable. I think this idea of having one rigid set of instructions um, is it's fool's gold born out of fear, in my opinion. Because
Mm.
when you scare the shit out of people and you tell them that if they slip up, they're gonna be in hell forever, then what that creates is that makes normal people neurodivergent, to be quite honest with you. It
Hmm.
makes
Hmm.
almost any sensible person neurotic. And then at that point, you're looking for some solid ground. You're looking for something that you can just lean on as like something that I can guarantee will get me out of hell. But the problem with that is that the whole thing about aside from the fact that the saving is done by God, not by us. um the part our role to play, right, is to be in is to be is to cultivate us a heart and a soul that is able to accept His love when we encounter it, and
Hmm.
after we pass, right. And the only way you can do that is to cultivate something in your heart. And if you're not cultivating something in your heart, you're not going to paint your numbers way into that
Mhm,
space.
mhm,
So it's like a false security on that level,
mhm.
because if you're not working on the heart, I don't care if that sounds trite or whatever, that's what God cares about. So if you're not gonna, if you can have a hard heart and paint by the numbers perfectly, that hard heart isn't ready for heaven.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think,
Uh,
man, hearing you speak, I wish like Matt Fradd would have any one of the three of us on his show. I just think, we'd have a lively conversation
Mhm.
and we might surprise him, but that's exactly the kind of stuff. Yeah. It brings to mind that, I don't remember. I'm such well. The evidence of me being Catholic is that I don't know my Bible verses, but it's the one where Jesus is like, you know, woe to you Pharisees because you like
Yeah,
tithe dill and mint and blah blah blah, and you
yeah.
kind of you exacerbate these burdens on your people, but you don't
Mhm,
care about what's actually important, which is justice and mercy and all of that stuff. And
mhm,
yeah, I think it is exactly that. And I think to your point, JD, exactly that. And I to a lesser extent, I feel this with myself, even growing up, that I think a hardliner approach really does encourage a development of like OCD and scrupulosity, and it does force you to become neurodivergent if you have the
yes.
temperament to take these things so seriously. Um,
Absolutely, and furthermore, what we see
mm,
constantly, interacting with or reading or watching a lot of people who've bought into that, is it also cultivates a hard heart.
mhm,
You see how hardened people's hearts become in that space,
mhm.
absolutely, yeah, and I think
and
we have to.
that's not, that's, I don't. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, no, I was just gonna say I totally agree with you, and we sort of have to evaluate the fruits of these different approaches to spirituality.
Yeah, that, yeah, right, exactly, exactly. The fruits. By the way, I wanted to ask you guys, Midnight, you sent me a message, saying, "Hey, do you want to join in?" I caught it late. What's the trigger for this conversation? Did something happen?
We just wanted to pick it back up since I've been MIA. I know Onan has done a few live streams solo, but yeah, I just wanted to catch up with him, and
Okay.
the particular topic of the day, it kickstarted with the meltdown over Pope Leo's comments about being consistently pro-life and opposing the death penalty. And of course that caused the trads to melt
Uh,
down because they were so triggered that Pope Leo is so publicly wrong about the death penalty because it sort of, I mean, in Ed Fazer and Dr. Peter Kwasniewski's words, more or less they made the same argument, which is like if you accept Pope Leo or even Pope Francis's condemnation of the death penalty, then it's basically saying that X and Y doctor of the church was wrong and these saints are wrong and scripture was
Mhm.
wrong. And it's sort of like to them, the continuity of death penalty is licit is more important than the Pope actually reflecting, like, no, I don't think we should do the death penalty anymore. And it's
what
it's
happens if
not
he
pro-life.
says it? What happens if he sits on that chair and says it?
Yeah, I know, right? If he does ex cathedra, the man that would flip things around
What,
because that
will he
again, you
like?
play the
Will he
ultimate
hit a
card.
force field? Will he like walk
Mhm.
to the chair and then bang, hit like a force field, and he can't make it to the chair?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Uh,
The,
how does that work?
I wonder
Well,
too. I wonder the Illuminati will have to take him out.
he'll create a lot of set of a contest overnight, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll take those that are, I would say, de facto set of a contest and make
Mhm,
them official set of a contest because there's a whole lot of them that are just,
mhm.
you know, trying to walk that fine line of, yeah, these are valid popes, but they're just on the cusp of heresy according to them. I mean, I I know I lived that world for a long time, and I think thankful I don't have to anymore.
That's why I say
But
everybody is a cafe Catholic. Everybody is a cafe Catholic.
exactly,
It's just a matter
Mhm.
of
yes,
which things you pick and choose. Yep.
yep, for
It,
Yeah.
sure, yep. No, you're absolutely right. And and I will be the first to admit I I I I don't want anyone to think I'm better than anyone else. I acknowledge it. And part of healing, if you will, and this is sort of an ongoing process. from traditionalism is I just came to grips with the fact that we are, and it's okay. I hope it's
Yeah,
okay.
it will
Yeah, I
have to
agree
be,
with you.
because the only difference is whether you're honest about it. You know, that's the
Yep.
only
That's
difference is,
spot
are you
on.
honest about it?
Mhm. That's spot
Yes.
on. Yeah. It kind of calls to mind. I think a few days ago, I'd asked in the Discord, I asked Father Carr about continuing to attend Mass or participating in the sacraments, even if you couldn't bring yourself to believe everything. And even if you're, in
Yeah.
some cases, a practical atheist. And I think like Father Carr is always just very good about answering the avalanche of questions we send him sometimes, and it was
Yeah.
really encouraging because he said that like I think his approach to spirituality is so much more about the journey and the discourse and the attempt to reach out, and how everybody also brings their own experience in the discourse with the church, and that it's only normal and human to sort of push back. I don't quite remember word for word what he said, but the short answer was yes, even if you don't line up perfectly, even if you have, portions of unbelief in these various areas of theology, that you could still be a part. And I think it's more about the process rather than check all of the boxes and like JD said, paint by numbers. So I think there is room for this kind of cafe Catholicism where you can't shut your brain off. You have to engage with spirituality and with scripture from where you are in your life's journey.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, for me at least, like I I never got to the point, and I've never, especially once I've had kids, I never really entertained it. But in the midst of my own struggles, I've never gotten to the point where I couldn't bring myself, or I didn't think there was a good value of me of attending mass. And I went for a long time without communion for different reasons, but I knew I needed to be there. But I could say I've had kids go through the teenage phase where sort of unbeknownst to me, they would go to mass, but they would not go inside, right? And they were dealing with those struggles of faith, and they would say, well, I don't know what I believe. And I told them, I said, well, look, it is perfectly natural to have the struggle, but I don't really believe that you want clarity. If you like, you have to go in, and if you just sit there, but be there, be available for God to reveal himself to you in a way that he hasn't told. So that's sort of what I've told my kids, and I would say they've all kind of gone through that phase, and now they've reached a point where this is important to them. So that's kind of how I handle it. Like I don't think people should be pressured to go in and participate entirely and receive the sacraments. But I think we need to show up and make ourselves available for God to reveal himself at a time and in a way that God sees fit.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We can't close ourselves off to
Yep.
him.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's true
Yeah,
whether you're in
I think
church or
I
whether
think
you
that's
are out of church. I think you have to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Keep going.
I think you just have to have that posture of acknowledging I'm struggling right now, and maybe even just be bluntly honest. God, I don't necessarily think I believe any of this stuff, but I want, if it's true, if you're true, I want to believe you and help me, right? Like kind of that, help my unbelief or whatever. I think if we always have that disposition, how is God going to reject that? Like how that is a brutally sincere and honest posture to be in, right? And God, if God is who we believe God to be, God's going to have to, fill that space in our lives when He thinks it is right.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I don't know. The only thing that makes sense to me, I'm not like, obviously, I'm just a guy with opinions, but
Hmm.
like the only thing
Hmm.
that makes sense to me is that what is going to really matter isn't whether you got the right answers in this foggy place where nobody really knows for sure what's true, because we're not
Yeah.
omniscient. It's not about guessing the right answers. I feel like it's more like have you cultivated something within yourself that upon meeting your loving creator, you'll reject him or embrace him?
Hmm.
When
Yep.
when he does reveal himself, when you do see God, and you do meet your maker, and you are hit with his love, are you going to be resentful about something, or are you going to be grateful that he is real? And I can't imagine somebody dying and this loving creator says, surprise, I am real. And this person who was
Yeah.
led to believe in this veiled reality where we can't know, was led to believe that he's not real, says, oh my God, you are real. Oh, this is amazing. And God's like, too bad. Down you go. Like, come on. Like, that's like, of who would,
Yeah.
what father would do that? You know what I mean? A child finally realizes that daddy is real and is so
Yeah.
grateful and is so happy to see daddy. And daddy's like, well, you should have believed I was real before when I was hiding. Like, that's nonsense. Like, I don't buy that for a sec.
Yeah. It's kind of like
I
what
think you're onto
dad.
something totally.
Yeah, and like what dad doesn't teach their kid how to ride a bike? I mean, could if you just said go out and figure out how to ride a bike, could most kids figure it out? Probably. Some might not. But like it'd be
Right.
like don't, if your kid goes out the first time and crashes their bike, you don't, no fathers would be like, you should, tough crap, you could have figured it out, or you should have figured it out. Yeah, I could have gone out and shown it to you, but that's not the way the game works, right? And that I think is the tension in like you say, at best we perceive God, we perceive moral truth in a very veiled way, right? And the one thing that I have come to learn, and this is something Joe and I were talking about too recently, is I think there is this tendency of trads, because I was like that, to immediately attribute bad motives to people that either reject or can't accept certain moral teachings of the church as being, well, they just you know they know 2 plus 2 is 4, but they reject it because they're selfish and
Oh
perverted, and
my
they would
God.
rather live this,
It's such a cop
and
out. It's such a cop out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's just not how people are. Now, are
No.
we, to some degree, maybe, but I think as a whole, most people are sincere, trying to do the best for themselves, trying to do the best for their families, and at worst are, mistaken or making poor decisions on hindsight. But I think that sincerity is truly there for almost everyone, other than those that are just
Yeah.
truly,
It
psychopaths or whatever.
and when people use those kind of lines, what that does is it immediately makes anybody who has genuinely experienced a wish that God was real and a sadness that they doubt he is, immediately makes myself, I'm like that.
Yeah,
I've gone through that. It makes somebody who's really genuinely cried out for years and years for God, show yourself to me, I want you to be real, and heard crickets, and who still hopes for God to be real. When you say, well, you just don't believe he's real because you don't want him to be real,
yeah,
immediately that person loses like all credibility with you. Like,
yeah,
okay, like you have no clue what you're talking about because I know what I've experienced. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And so at that, once you like ascribe these like bad motives to a person who actually
mhm,
doesn't have those bad motives, you've lost all credibility. And also you've cut your own self off from understanding and from being able to reach a person. Um, and I really think it is a cop out because it's easier. And I think a lot of times people also struggle with doubt who won't admit that they struggle with doubt. And so they
yeah,
lean on these sort of thought terminating type of things. But the fact is, we all live in a space, we all live, aside from people who have had like miraculous
yeah,
experiences, we all live in a state of utter uncertainty where
Yeah.
we don't hear from God what's what. We hear from a person who heard from a person who
Yeah.
read from a book, who, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
we have to trust all these people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, a priest, I once said this, and I thought, and this was when I was still, I was sort of a rebellious traditionalist, but it was a priest said, "Those who shout doubt," it's always stuck with me. I want to put Murphy's comment on here because I think this is emblematic of where I think the thing goes off the tracks. So Murphy says, "Hey, since we can't be sure, let's just throw out all traditional rules, presume God's grace, and throw out everything the church has as a body of believers has reasoned out of the last 2,000 years." See, that's not what we're saying, and I think that is a
Right?
that is a straw man because
Exactly.
God 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 gave us 10 commandments. I think it is significant that God gave us 10 commandments, and I don't think there's anyone on this call that really takes issue with any of the 10 commandments. Can you think of anything
Look,
that gives you heartburn?
I think trads take issue with the "thou shall not kill" part.
Yeah. I mean,
And you, I
it,
think
it,
here's the thing.
yeah,
I
go
like
ahead.
the I like the two, right? I like the loving God the most and
Mm,
then loving your neighbor as yourself. Like I think ultimately everything we have all this uncertainty. Yeah, like what he's saying is a caricature of what we're saying, a crazy
yeah,
caricature of what we're saying. But
yeah,
the tradition and all of that is still, you have to choose which tradition you're going to follow because there's many ancient
yeah,
traditions, right? There's many ancient
yeah,
traditions that conflict with each other. Which ancient tradition are you going to follow to the T, right? And then like at some point you're acknowledging you're just sort of like blindly doing something because you need something, you need to cling to some sort of rock, some sort of certainty, and I get that. But to me, the most certain point, the most certain thing, the most certain rock that I can cling to is the idea that in order to ultimately exist in a heaven, in an eternity that is based on love between you and your creator and everybody else, you have to cultivate that love within you. If you
yeah,
can't cultivate that soft heart within you, all that other stuff is not going to get you there. Like, so if I have to pick one piece of certainty, one thing to one iron to sharpen myself on, it's, am I being loving enough? Is my heart hardening in this moment? And that is actually extremely difficult road for a lot of
hmm
people. and and,
yeah,
and but that is the thing, that if you're going to cling to one rock to say, this is what I'm going to hold on to, I do think clear cut that's the most clear cut, obvious thing for me. It's a lot more clear cut that you can't exist in an afterlife built on love if you haven't built love within you.
yeah. Isn't that the great commandment that our Lord gave? Is love our Lord with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that is
Yeah,
the great commandment, right? Everything else,
right. They asked him which of the 10 commandments, and he just made
yeah.
up two other ones and said, follow these.
That's right. That's right. But
Right.
I think going back to Muskett's comment, even if we just, for purposes of the conversation, limit ourselves to the Judeo-Christian Catholic perspective, okay? Even then, I had a guy. I'll be curious what Muskett's response to this is. But there was a guy over on he's a set of a contest, but over on Twitter said any Catholic who does not you guys know what the Ember Days are. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. There was these days. I think it was with the change of the season, so 4 times a year there was some additional fasting and prayer and almsgiving. And apparently
mm,
there's some mini fasting that goes on. And he basically said any Catholic that does not follow the fasting requirements of the Ember Days is in mortal sin, and your soul is in jeopardy if you die without confessing it. And I have no doubt that that is once, at least at one point in time, that was quote unquote the rule of the church. And the Sedevacantist, a lot of them say that is still the rule of the church, and maybe it is. But most people, even most trads, modern trads, don't follow that, at least to that extreme. Some of them may do it. I think even my parents try to follow it as sort of a devotional thing, but I don't think they see that as an absolute moral requirement.
No.
But
Yeah,
who do you
100%.
believe?
I
Maybe
think
maybe
like the
those guys
thread
are,
What
you
or even
at that point, what's it going to be? 3 people in heaven, and what kind of heaven is that?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think
Everybody
there's
you
some
ever
people that
loved is
that's
all
kind of
burning
what
in
that's kind
hell.
of what they're looking for,
It,
and you'll smile because of
and
it, Saint
and
Thomas
and
Aquinas.
that's what we're talking about, the cultivation of a hard heart. That's going to
Yeah,
backfire so
yeah,
bad on a person, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I mean, that's why I don't know. I mean, you know, I think the conflict on the death penalty issue is I mean I do think it is a problem, but I think it is, to me, it is it, like I said, all these other things that we were talking about, I think are really where a lot of the problem lies, because for most of us, the death penalty issue is never going to affect us on a direct level. You know, maybe to some
Hey, Craig,
extent, and
I don't
how.
know if it was just me, but you went silent for like 10 seconds there.
Okay, sorry about
I
that.
I still heard you, so it might be just a signal
Okay.
thing. No worries.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
m-
I'm keeping the live chat lively here, so this is a good
awesome.
division of labor.
Uh,
So on the death penalty thing, about the extent to which it, I don't know, affects my life is maybe when it comes to the voting booth, right? But beyond that, it has no bearing whatsoever on my daily life, right? But
yeah, thank
these
God.
other things, whether it's the Ember Days or the sexual rules, or I don't know, whatever, how you hold
What's
your
the Ember
hand at
Days?
mass. They
It
were
was the
quarterly
the
fasting
fasting
days.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they used to be enforced under penalty of mortal sin. Maybe they still are. I guess it depends who you ask. Um, but it's not even. It's not as if you know there's uniformity of what the quote unquote church has said for 2,000 years. It's not like, I think there's this idea that there's just been this comprehensive, unchanging set of rules and minor rules and sub rules and subparts from the beginning, and there hasn't been, and it's been organic, and they've changed, and some have come and some have gone. Like it is, you can't just say, well, you either accept all or you reject all of what the church has said for 2,000 years. We all reject some of it for some reason.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, we all do. We all do. And again, I also think I think when you we've seen that when you drill down, not you don't have to drill down too much, but when you drill down, there is a certain like segment. I'm definitely wouldn't say all, but there's a certain segment of this sort of wave of hardlinerism and tradism or whatever you want to call it
Mhm.
that is it's not actually based on it's based on people joining this faith or getting more serious about this faith out of a cultural and ethnic chauvinism. And there's like a cultural ethnic chauvinism about our quote unquote uh like Western European traditions that people get super horny about, that then they follow the religion because it's like following the religion of their forefathers or whatever. And when you drill down, it becomes more about like pride,
Well,
like
I,
Absolutely.
chauvinism.
it is a phenomenon, I think, that we see in politics too. Like people like being in an exclusive group. People like
Yeah,
being live in this idea they have some sort of special. This is why conspiracy theories are so common. This is why we've seen some of the political movements of the last, let's say, 10 years, is people people thrive on this idea that we are an exclusive club. We have information or values or prestige, that most of the world doesn't. And so there
Yep.
is, and I don't know what the
Our ancestors were
explanation.
the best ancestors.
Yep. And, and I'm sure there's some sort of a social evolutionary explanation behind it, but I really
Yep.
think that
Oh, I think we might have lost Craig there a bit.
I thought it was me again.
No, this time I also lost Craig.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that what you the point you brought up about
Murphy's
cultural,
muskets just put it back over his head.
let's see, yeah, Ember Days, procedural obligation.
I'm just
doesn't
kidding.
change, blah, blah, blah.
Hey, I actually gotta go. Wife is calling.
Okay, hey, let's catch up soon. Hopefully you can join again.
All right. God bless, and God bless to
bless.
all
Keep in touch.
the trolls in the comments who make this fun.
All right, I'll keep it going until
Love you all.
Craig's
Take
able to
care.
rejoin. Yeah, I love you, dude. All right, I'll keep it going
All
until
right.
Craig's back
Peace out.
online. Peace out.
All right.
But yes,
I trust
all right.
you.
Until hopefully Craig is able to rejoin here. I think we've lost the signal, but I do think like the tribalism that's inherent in these rad trad circles is exacerbated by the political atmosphere, unfortunately. I mean, specifically speaking, as someone residing in the States, I think there really is this crisis of identity in the midst of multiculturalism, and I think rad trad Catholicism has become this tool of reinforcing this perception of the threat against Western values and the desire for stability and even relative homogeneity of culture. And so it has retreated into this kind of toxic tribalism and chauvinism. Um, and bringing it back for a second to the issue of the death penalty, I totally agree with Craig. Like I don't see the death penalty affecting me personally or practically, but I think it does affect me in the sense of it shapes what kind of society I'm living in and what kind of society we're all living in. Because to choose to put criminals to death is in essence saying that they are beyond hope, they're beyond rehabilitation. And is that really the path we want to go as a society? Now, I agree that there are certain situations where, especially in more primitive societies, and even in the current day, maybe there are societies that are underdeveloped and they don't have secure prison systems and they can't reasonably contain people that are threats to the community. And unfortunately, putting them to death, capital punishment, is the practical way to go. But for most developed countries where we have really secure prisons, we have access to healthcare, mental health help, rehabilitative procedures. I think that we've outlived our useful or death penalty is no longer useful to us, and it only continues to reinforce this kind of barbarism in our nature that we have to overcome. And I think that's what really elevates the standards of human morality. If we can look at the greatest evil among us and still somehow,
hey, I'm back.
hey, there you go. I was just thanks for saving me from my little ramble. JD had to bounce. His wife was calling, but yeah, I was just I'll recap what I had the last couple minutes. Is just I totally agree with you that death penalty wouldn't affect me on a personal and practical level, but it does shape what kind of society
Yeah.
we live in. And I think
Yeah.
especially in developed first world countries, I really do believe that to choose the death penalty and to support it, it's an expression of no longer hoping that someone can be rehabilitated. And I think it would be accurate to say that the most Christian way of looking at the worst and most hardened criminal is that there's still some kind of humanity there that can somehow be rehabilitated. And I think to choose death penalty when there are other options is a kind of spiritual despair, I think, as a society. Now, of course, in underdeveloped countries where there are no secure prison systems and you can't contain human beings that are threats to the community, it is a tragic reality that maybe capital punishment really is the way to go. But I think it affects us all in the sense that choosing capital punishment is just reinforcing a kind of barbarism that we have in our nature.
Well, and what's Murphy saying? So, like, I mean, the death penalty for as a punishment for people that have committed heinous crimes such as murder is different than killing
Mhm.
people that are threats to. I mean, there's all kinds of violent criminals or people that are in prison, unless they become even more violent. Are we just going to execute everyone? I mean, is that,
Mhm.
I just so I get it, but I just think that is a super super slippery slope, because how do you decide who needs to be killed to preserve the safety of community? Because I think that is very much a kind of a utilitarianism that doesn't look at the inherent dignity of people. And like you said, we are sinners. We are hopefully always redeemable. I think even the most horrible person can be saved, can repent, and isn't that our job? Isn't that our job to give everyone every opportunity to repent? And I know some will say, well, the looming threat of execution, even if you're wrongly accused, is a blessing, because now you have time to prepare. And I just think, oh my gosh, you guys lost the plot.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with
I'm
you
back
there.
for a little while.
All right, we got the luxury of JD. But yeah, I was
A few more minutes.
before you rejoined the chat, Craig and I were just kind of discussing how the death penalty might not affect us on an individual level, but it shapes the kind of society that we live in. And in a
Yeah.
developed world where we have secure prisons and we have access to different kinds of health and mental health support and rehabilitative programs, I think to still choose capital punishment is it's a social expression of a kind of spiritual despair that a person that you decide is deserving of this is beyond any kind of redemption. And I think to keep someone,
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form, their life in prison, they've committed the worst kind of violent crimes, but I think to somehow continue to engage with them as a human being, maybe visiting doctors, visiting family members and old friends, I think it's still choosing to look at the most hardened criminal and see that there's something there that can possibly be redeemed. I think to just kill them
It's
off because
it's
they're
glorified
yeah,
vengeance.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
glorified vengeance. It's a
Mhm.
way to like what's the word? Institutionalize and sort of legitimize an internal attitude of a person, of dehumanizing and scumifying a person, like allowing yourself to look at a person as dirt if they've done something bad, as
Mhm.
deserving of no more life. It's like it's a way to like make yourself feel legitimate and
Oh, did we lose JD there?
I think we did. Yeah, it's a
Oh boy.
superiority complex, really, is what it is. It's like
Mhm.
I'm so much better than that, and yeah, and I think it is why so many traditionalists have this, I would say almost a fetish about hell,
can
because
y'all
I
hear
think
me?
there is that. Yeah,
Yep.
we can hear
Yep,
you
you're
now.
back.
All right,
You're
I
that's
know
a
what
really
happened.
good description. Hell, fetish over hell. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
a really kind of going back to the Ember Days thing that you discussed. Like, in what way is telling people to fast or else they commit mortal sin? In what way does that like help anybody's spiritual journey or reinforce a God of love and justice and virtue and a God who wants virtue? Like, you're literally just pointing a gun at people's head to manipulate them into accepting certain practices. It's just the most toxic, sadistic stuff out there.
I
Well,
saw something in the
and
comments, by the way, a minute ago. I saw something in the
Mhm.
comments, by the way, a minute ago, trying to make a case for identitarianism within the faith. And it's funny to me
Mhm.
mm,
because we're talking about a creator of the entire universe, and we're supposed to think
yeah,
that the way to that we go that in the realm of worshiping our creator, that we're supposed to become identitarian in that walk. Like, we're supposed to think that this creator doesn't, like, we are not brothers and sisters with everybody else in this world. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree.
I think this is the stuff, like the stuff that Murphy's Muskets is bringing up. Things I think we could all think about more. But my instinct really is that, I mean, we can't put things back in Pandora's box, like especially in the West. We are just multicultural. That's just how immigration worked out. And maybe some of us are. I I don't want to put too much of a value judgment. It's totally human to sort of long for your own culture and your own roots wherever they may be. But I think we can't really hit the rewind button and to retreat into our own cultural subgroups and sort of fight for supremacy is just not the way. I think we need to learn to coexist, and our sense of identity is gonna, like JD said, I think humans are very adaptable, and we have to find a balance of still honoring what our particular ancestors did and valued, but also learn from each other. I mean, one very practical way that multiculturalism benefits us is like food. Like, the variety of food is pretty amazing in this country, the variety of music and art styles. And I know that it's very easy to fear that, oh, the the immigrants or the invaders, they're going to dilute our moral framework and whatnot, but I really think the vast majority of commoners, and I count myself as a total commoner, I think we largely share the same moral intuitions. I don't really get, like, maybe there are a few extremists and people with tendencies towards violence or different ways of life that are incompatible, but I think humans really are adaptable, as JD said, and we have to keep the lines of communication open beyond our circles.
Every so-called pure culture or pure ethnicity or whatever is a result of a whole lot of adapting and mixing that came before it. We're constantly mixing and adapting, but and like, the thing is, we all come from the same two people, so we have a lot in common. But beyond that, to choose a faith journey towards the creator of the universe based on a tribal motive just doesn't make any sense. It's like it's almost like you're acting as though this is one God among many. Like, if this is the same God that made everybody, why are you believing in this God for your own tribal? I'm not saying it right, but, like, I don't know. There seems to be a disconnect there.
It is almost, yeah, it's appealing to the correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this sense of using God as a bludgeon against your enemies and the ultimate sort of stamp of your culture's superiority, in a sense.
It's using his name in vain, because you said it exactly. It's like using God, using a particular framework of a particular icon of God or image of God, as a way to validate your own earthly tribal preferences or identity or whatever. It's using God to serve your identity, rather than right.
And it goes. I mean, it is kind of the natural trajectory of Judeo-Christianity. I mean, just look at Zionism and the idea that, and I'm not even saying this is wrong, but let's just say it for what it is. The idea that Israel was God's chosen people, God's chosen land, like a tiny speck of kind of crappy land in the middle of the Middle East amongst the entire world. Like, this was the select group of people, the race, the place, and they're still fighting over that piece of land, right? But I think we've just kind of adopted that type of Zionistic approach, but we just apply it to our Western Christianity, Western Catholicism.
Yeah,
and I guess in some way that was like a lot of, right, like a lot of different peoples and tribes and cultures for eons and eons sort of had this idea of their own special God that like, it was their special god or whatever, like that saw them as, you know, the best people. and
Mhm.
and um I think a lot of this new wave tradism stuff seems to be trying to turn our universal god into one of those tribal gods, one of those, you know, gods who smiles down on like Northern Europe. And that's it.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
and this is a. I think this really is a tribal. I think Musket was talking about, sort of the evolutionary component, but I think it is just kind of a. I think science has proven that we humans have the reptilian side of our brain. I can't remember which part of it is way behind the rest of us. Like we are very that almost hunter gatherer, that fear. What is it? Fight or flight mechanism in our brain that was, I don't know, necessary for survival many many years ago, is still there, and we make a lot of decisions based on that, even though it's not really reasonable, and it's not even helpful today. But that part of our brain has not caught up with it. But I think it really does explain tribalism, even when it comes to our religious faith and all these kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah, we're always at risk of falling back into it. Um, and you know, and I think I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, you know, caring about your family
Yeah,
more than
yeah,
strangers on some level and all that. Um,
yeah.
I don't think that really honestly, earnestly applies to, like, your ethnicity the same way. And I think it's okay to be proud of your cultural heritage,
Hmm.
but, like, to to use God, who loves the furthest person from you as intensely as he loves you, who who is the creator of both of you, to use him as a tool to validate your own chauvinism
Hmm.
is what I see people doing.
Yeah,
People are using God to validate their own chauvinism, and then they're
yeah.
using the concept of family to
Mhm.
validate their own chauvinism. And
Yeah.
like, none of those are really.
Yep. No, I think we are a complicated mess of sort of uh, you know instincts and that hunter gatherer part of ourselves, the fight or flight, and also trying to live in a
Absolutely.
trying to make sense of the revealed, Jesus and the prophets and whatever. I mean, we're a collection of a lot of different things that are influencing us, right? And I think, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think we have to understand that we are kind of an organic mosaic of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like, pride is part of that. Um, wrath is
Mhm.
part of that.
Mhm.
You know, lust, all those seven deadly sins are sort of always knocking at the door on us. And it's, you know, and like you said, a lot of it does come from just animal instinct that
Yeah.
got
Mhm.
us to this point.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, even I think Murphy's Muskets would agree. His comments, genetics will make you tribal no matter what, and he sort of
Mhm.
reaffirms, you know, what you guys said
But
about it's so natural to prioritize our families
Mhm.
over strangers. But I think the issue comes when, like, you're using God to bludgeon other people and you're otherizing
yes,
them and you're demonizing the others. It's totally like, of course, our wives, our parents, our brothers and sisters, of course, we can't, we have to take care of our own. It's the most
Yeah.
natural thing. But
It's
it's when they overstep and they start demonizing others and fear mongering about others.
yeah. And it's natural to have biases,
Mm-hmm.
tribal biases included. But
Absolutely.
it's not good. It's not good walking with God to make him the rubber stamp for your biases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like-
yeah, it like you said, he's a tool to legitimize whatever your biased agenda is.
Right.
Not-
So he's supposed
Oh, did we lose JD a bit there?
Yeah, is that on his end or my? Can you hear me?
Oh, did it happen again?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
back.
Okay. Yeah, we're back. He's back. No worries. Keep
you
going.
hear me?
JD, you were on a roll.
No, I'm just saying, like, we all have biases, and there have been at times evolutionary reasons for those biases, but God is not there to validate those biases. He's there to help us transcend those biases. Like God, we should be, well, beyond that, we should be trying to transcend those biases because of our love for God.
Mhm.
Because of our love for a God who loves the most distant stranger as intensely as he loves us. That is our responsibility to transcend our biases against the stranger.
It's a deal, Musket. I agree. I'll do that. I mean, I I don't know. I mean, I think if we're aware, if we can be aware of how our own kind of views of reality, we really do, I think, create an image of God that's a reflection of ourselves and our sort of values as much or more than the other way around, where God is infusing that in us. I think God in many ways is the, colored based on our own perceptions of what we think he ought to be or what we want him to be, rather than how God probably actually is.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
look,
on all things
everybody
considered,
is
I'd rather have a bias towards a loving God than a wrathful
Yeah,
one. And I
that's
completely
right.
acknowledge that we
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
escape.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
think it's the most human thing to have biases, and of course we strive towards objective reality. But to completely rid ourselves of biases would be to be inhuman in a sense, because that is part of the flaw of our nature. We can't
Yeah.
completely shed our subjectivity.
the problem I have is not with
Yeah.
people being flawed. We're all flawed. The problem I have is
Mhm.
with using God as
Mhm.
bringing God down to making God like a rubber stamp for your flaws. Using like we all have wrath, and we all have moments where we want vengeance. But to make God the sort of the stamp for your vengeance, to bring him into it, and to pretend that getting vengeance is a way of worshiping God. Being tribal is our way of worshiping God, or we worship God as a way of being tribal, as a way we worship the God of our ancestors because we're honoring our tribe. To me, that's like, you know what? Have your flaws. We all have them. Don't put that on the creator of the universe. That's my issue with it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, also just on a pragmatic level, in what world would a tribal, vengeful God preach the gospel in a way that we'd want to? Like, how is that good news?
Right.
But it feels a
Right.
little bit.
Love your
It feels
neighbor
a little
as
right, and it feels a little bit how the Greeks and the Greek gods, they had these gods that had a lot of, I don't know, human qualities to them, right? Like they like they were gods, but they were, I don't know, flawed or very, they're almost superhumans. And I think sometimes it feels like we do that to God too. We try to, I don't know, make God give God a vengeful streak or whatever, because that's kind of how we
Yeah,
perceive reality,
that's
or
like,
we want
I'll be
God to have
honest,
that.
that is something I have difficulty a lot of times with scripture. I'm a Catholic after all, but like I oftentimes I have difficulty with the way some, especially Old Testament, seems to really make God out to be like um uh, uh a very um insecure,
Hmm.
uh petulant, tantrum throwing, easily offended, like type of, like the worst kind of person that like the person who
Yeah.
just like, they take everything super personally.
Yeah.
They're super insecure. They throw a tantrum. They take everything as an insult. They get really upset about it, like the slightest little slight. And it's like, that's not a strong loving creator. That is a very like triggery type of Trigglypuff. Like that,
Mhm.
I don't know. I struggle with that kind of a presentation of God in certain scriptures. I'll be honest.
I totally agree. I think
It,
the only way that I've been able to reconcile that is that really scripture is human beings working out in the midst
Hmm.
of their struggle what God is. And I think in their deepest, darkest moments, they had an imperfect understanding of a God who is vengeful. And also, I sometimes
yeah,
think maybe it's sort of like when you're suffering oppression, you sort of want a superhero, vengeful God to be on your side. And I think a lot of
absolutely.
scripture I think a lot of scripture came from, the Jewish people being at a low point for their community, and I think that's reflected in how they paint God.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Well,
man.
I I have to. I'm almost home, and I have to relieve our poor sitter of the kids. So I'm gonna probably wrap this up a little bit. But this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the conversation in the chat. It's always nice to have different different views on things, because I'm always trying to. I don't have all the answers, and I, I am sincerely trying to get better, figure out my blind spots, my biases, whatever it is, and try to practice what I preach. And I hope we're all trying to do that, right? I think that's the message. Is
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to your point about that attitude of openness, especially when you're
Mhm.
going to church or participating in
Yep,
the sacraments and you can't, you're asking God to help your unbelief. And as
yep,
JD said, you're trying to cultivate a loving heart. I think
hmm,
maybe that's really what it is to have faith the size of a mustard seed,
hmm,
that we
yep,
can't check all the boxes, but it's that disposition of openness and discovery and genuinely wanting to approach truth and beauty and goodness.
yep. I think
Yeah, props
keep
props to Craig for planting that seed today.
Yeah.
keep keep showing up, and be patient with those that are maybe on a road of struggle that you aren't right now, or maybe never have. Like, just, I think if we could all just give each other space and room to work out their struggles, I think we'd go a long way to helping people on, we're all kind of on the same journey, just we're at different stages of
Mhm.
the journey. I think that's something we can
Mhm.
all try to keep in mind as we interact with each other and
And
try to make
I
sense of the
wanna
world.
I wanna because there's often like a back a sort of a adversarial vibe between some of us
Yeah.
and Murphy over here. I do want
Hmm.
to acknowledge. I think the last comment that I'm seeing, that he said, acknowledging that nature requires us to exercise our will to defeat entropy. How do you make a world where you acquire resources or even beliefs, and it's not at the expense of others? Um, I think um, that's a whole extra conversation that we can't get into now. But I think that's a very fair and honest
Yeah.
question on his part, and I think
Yep.
that's very fair for him to ask that question, and
Yep.
and it's a deep point. that
Mhm.
that should
Yeah.
be that we can explore one of these days.
Yep.
Yeah. So thanks to Murphy's Muskets and our late addition, good old Jonah 2.0. Thanks for the
Yeah.
lively comment section. This is exactly why Onan does these things. If I
Yeah.
can end on a really cheesy note, though, I wanted to
Yes.
say that the great thing about this version of Onan is the only seed he spills is the seed of compassion.
That's right. Yep. Well,
Oh yeah,
I
and Jonah's last comment was dope too. The whole thing about shedding our subjectivity. That's kind of the point of all that. Absolutely.
Yep. No, I think this is a good conversation, and as we always say, I think these are conversations that don't really happen anywhere else in the Catholic sphere, and so I always appreciate the conversations and the back and forth, even where we are in disagreement. I think this is much needed, and so we'll continue to do this, and hope you guys continue to show up and banter with us. So,
Thanks for hosting them, Craig.
all
Yep.
right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys. Hope you all have a great evening, and we'll catch you next time.
God bless.